Hey, I'm Jono.
And I'm Ian.
And we're Gearheads here at Competitive Cyclist. I got a question for you.
Go for it.
Who is the hottest road team in cycling?
Jumbo Visma.
All right, and with that comes hot bikes, fast bikes. Cervelo is who we're talking about here today. And we went out there and toured their headquarters.
We did, yeah. They're located in Aliso Viejo now, so in Southern California, right by Laguna Beach. They were in Toronto, but moved recently. And we went there to check out their HQ. We talked to a product manager.
Yep, an engineer. Director of sales.
And the director of sales. We also got the tour of the facility, and there's all kinds of awesome stuff there. Stuff from Team CSC from back in the day, Cervelo test team, more recent stuff. There was Jonas Vingegaard's, his yellow jersey was there signed, so it was
so many jerseys.
Yeah, so many jerseys.
A lot of history with this.
A lot of history with the company. Yeah. We talked to Hal Walters, the director of North American sales, and he's going to run us through all the history.
We sure did. Let's go talk to him.
Cervelo was essentially founded in 1993. Phil White and Gerard Vrooman founded the company, and it actually came about, it was a college engineering project for the two of them. They started looking at composites and how aerodynamics can be leveraged in cycling. And the first bike was called the Baraki. It's a wild looking thing. It's bright green. It's got a terrifyingly steep steer tube angle, but super, super cool bike, and really kind of opened the door for aerodynamics and new materials in cycling. But that first bike was prototyped. There was some interaction with Gianni Bugno, famous Italian cyclist at the time. But within traditional road cycling, it never really got much attention, never really took off. But interestingly, triathletes, obviously aero is huge in triathlon. And, being a little bit more progressive, a little bit more open-minded group of cyclists, the brand really found its first bit of traction and interest within triathlon. Today it's still a really big core part of our business. And that aerodynamic influence obviously flows through the rest of the product line. But then in 2003, we sponsored CSC Saxo Bank with Bjarne Riis, and that really was an interesting partnership. The team was super focused on product development, testing, engineering, and that ties right in with the DNA and the blood of our brand. Very much an analytical approach to making bikes, designing products, really heavily focused on testing and justifying everything we think is going to happen in the real world, making sure we can back that up with testable and repeatable data. After CSC, we went on to sponsor the Cervelo test team somewhere around 2008, and that led to bikes like the R3 Mud. We went into the R5CA project, which was kind of the pinnacle of a lightweight drop bar bike at the time that came out. And we kind of fast forward a little bit. We've got a ton of Pro Tour victories at this point. We've got one Tour de France victory in 2008, and we're now at this place sponsoring Team Jumbo Visma, which is just kind of a magic and special time. We've got our second Tour de France win, a couple of cyclocross world championships, hopefully a couple more spring classics coming this year, and we're now relocated from Toronto into California. We get to enjoy 12 months of riding every year and beautiful sunny weather even in February. So it's a pretty cool story and exciting to see where it might go.
Well, that was pretty cool. I think we learned a lot. I know I did. Coming to the world of bikes, I always thought of Cervelo as a TT company, and now that's obviously not the case. They are well-rounded. They have gravel bikes, they have mountain bikes, hardtail. I know you are very familiar with Cervelo. You've owned a few. What's your impression of them?
Yeah, listening to Hal was awesome. I mean, the genesis of the brand, the two founders' story, the aerodynamics, all that, it's really cool. But I think a lot of people already know about that. My particular personal history with Cervelo, they were my second carbon bike I ever owned. So I owned a Look, and then I owned a Cervelo R3, and that bike was incredible. I think that was
one of your favorites, I think. You still talk about it to this day.
I love that bike. I look for them on eBay all the time. 2014 Cervelo R3. Yeah. And then the next bike I had was a P3, because I was in triathlons. So
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, I did that. And then after that, I owned an S5.
So you mentioned the R3.
One of my favorite bikes.
Sadly, they don't make it anymore.
They don't make that bike anymore?
They do not. But we sat down with Maria. She is the director of product management. And let's learn more about them.
So I would say the core of the brand, or kind of what our history is rooted in, is in our R5, S5, P5. And the 5 moniker really stands for the pinnacle of what we can offer per that specific use case. And in the case of R5, S5, P5, those are also what our Pro Tour teams will be riding. So obviously very high-end road racing, lightweight is the R5, S5 is the aero bike, and then P5 is the time trial bike. Just below that, we also have the P series, which is geared much more towards the age grouper type of triathlete, shorter distances. And then just below the S5 and R5 is where soloist sits. So we firmly believe that at that pinnacle level, combining the lightweight and the aerodynamic categories is too much of a compromise for our Pro Tour teams. But the reality is that majority of people who are buying their own bikes can't afford to buy both of them. So the soloist really comes together to give that rider the best of both worlds in an affordable package. Yeah, so we also have Caledonia, and we do Caledonia in both the 5 level and like a base level Caledonia. And that bike is really intended for the everyday rider. So somebody who may still enjoy riding in a competitive manner, maybe just in groups or with their buddies, but they're not necessarily lining up at a start line or pinning a number on. And that bike is really designed to go long distances, keep the rider in a position that maybe is more comfortable for them because they don't need to be in such an aggressive position. We look at it as a modern take on what a road bike should be for the majority of people. And then on the dirt side of things, we have a Sparrow and a Sparrow 5. We feel we've sort of, I don't want to say invented, but maybe somewhat created this gravel race segment of the gravel market. And then the 5 level was just a even better iteration of the original Sparrow with a bit lighter weight and more integration. And then going into the mountain bike space with the hardtail of ZHT5.
Well, that was great to hear from Maria. She really broke the line down for us. It may seem like they don't have as many bikes as they may have had in the past, like they don't have the complete R series or the complete S series anymore, but they still have the top of the line there. And then they have the bike like behind us, the Soloist, which is kind of a marriage of the two bikes.
Caledonia.
Yep.
And then they jumped into gravel and also cross-country mountain bike last year with their hardtail.
Yeah, the ZHT5.
Yeah, ZHT5.
You know, someone has to design all of these bikes and engineer all these bikes. Cervelo is known for being an engineering-first bike brand. So who we're going to talk to now?
Yeah, we're going to talk to Scott Roy. He is the engineering manager at Cervelo, and he's going to walk us through how they design and test bikes.
There's a few different avenues that we go down depending on what the requirements for the product are. If it's an aero heavy bike like an S5 or a P5, we'll spend some of the early time. We talk about a tube shape library that we've collated over the years of profiles and variations of those profiles and how they interact with other profiles, and then we can, best case scenario, we can pick and choose some parts for that, which was like the Solus, which is what we did. Other end of that scale is we have to start from scratch, and we'll look at how we can create a really rough 3D model in SolidWorks, bring that into a CFD program and run iterations of that until we are comfortable. The engineers in the group can be like, well, let's continue to make it better and let's continue to make it better. But at some point we need to be like, stop, let's 3D print this, let's take it to the tunnel, let's make sure that what we see in CFD matches what we see in real life. We can put a full bike in the tunnel, we can print that, or we can look at sections, like if we're focusing on the front end, the S5, how do we look at the stem and fork and frame interaction? If it's a broader picture like an Sparrow or a Soloist, you look at a full frame. The other end of that, if it's not an aero-heavy project and it's more of a structural project like an R5, we do the same thing except in FEA. So we look at how we can optimize tube shapes. We have a similar library, not as an extensive one as our aero section. If you can see behind me, that welding table is basically our kind of test bench for validating stiffness and weight. We could directly influence what the handling characteristics and the stiffness characteristics on the road would be by changing it and validating on that table. So if we're looking at a structural project, then we'll look at running iterations of that. The problem with that is we can't always go and cut molds and get carbon and test that, right? There's an infinite amount of variables that can go into a layup that you, again, will get in this loop of just being like, oh, we'll change this slightly. We'll change this ply position or shape or what the material of that ply is. You can change a ply in a tiny way and it will have a completely different impact on the system. So it is a lot harder on the structural side, and you can have these projects blow out timing-wise, but we get to a point where we're happy. Then there's two ways we can go. We can get an alloy geosample. So we'll go and make sure that what we are trying to achieve from a handling and fit perspective, irrespective of how the bike will perform, is correct. And then we'll validate that. And if we're comfortable with that, then we'll move and cut steel. We'll get a first sample, we'll ride that. Does it match? Does it meet what our expectation was in FEA? If it doesn't, then we'll have to go back, either do a shape change, a layup change. There's a number of things we can address. And then again, that cycle, same as on the aero side, we go through a couple of cycles for that. get through to where these projects all converge, right? We'll say we're happy with the aero performance, or we're happy with the structural performance, or whatever the metrics are. We'll present that in a design review to the product team, as well as marketing and finance and all that. Did you meet the timeline? Are the performance of the bike is correct? Is the price where we need it to be? X, Y, Z. And then at that point, we kind of say, okay, let's go. Let's turn this project on full gas. And then we'll do two things. We'll run kind of a pilot production. We'll do all the development testing again. So we'll go through all the sizes, and we'll test every single size to the minimum ISO requirement. We have an ISO plus, is what we call it. So we look at what we think is not adequate testing in ISO and go above. So we'll go through those standard tests that are our own. Once we're happy with, be it weight, stiffness, whatever those metrics are, we then say, okay, let's go and do a mini mass production run, which is essentially a pilot. We'll do 25, 30 frames for each size, and we'll randomly pick them. We'll send them to a few different labs. They have our own factory does internal testing. We have our own lab in Asia, in Taiwan, that we take frames randomly from the factory, have them test it, then we get frames sent here, and then we make sure all 3 spots line up, and then we're okay to move to mass production and sell the bike and move it to market.
So yeah, bikes are pretty complex, as we learned from Scott.
Yeah.
What was the most impressive thing that you learned from him?
I mean, my mind was a little boggled with a lot of the stuff that he said, but
That was over my head.
yeah, but some of the stuff was really interesting. And when they really think about a structural design for a bike, it's a different thought process, as opposed to the aerodynamics of the bike is a different thought process. So I really liked how he broke that down. So he talked a lot about the bikes, and we can talk about bikes all day long. We're both bike nerds.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, what do we got to get out and do on these things?
We got to test them out ourselves. We got to ride them. So I'm going to go hop on a Caledonia 5 and see if I can drop some folks at Cervelo.
Good luck.
Yeah. All right, going for a little group ride with Cervelo folks. I'll try not to drop anybody.
How was it?
Oh, it was fun. Got to ride some hilly roads. Got to try out the Caledonia 5. Super fun. Got to hammer a climb. I got dropped. Yeah, I got dropped.
Oh, you said you were going to drop them.
Yeah, it's wintertime. Just haven't been hitting the bike a lot. It was fun though. Would recommend.
Overall, good day?
Good day. Great day.
So you're back.
I am.
I tore my hamstring kind of before the trip, and I couldn't ride, but I was jealous to see you out on those beach front roads.
I feel bad for you.
Yeah. How did the Caledonia 5 ride? Did you drop anybody?
I tried. Those guys are strong. They ride bikes at Cervelo, and it shows. But no, I love the bike. I think it's a great bike for just big, stupid, long rides. It may not be the best like racing bike, but if you just like to get out and ride your bike for a long time, it's so comfortable and it's efficient. Like, great bike for that.
Yeah, Cervelo are great brand partners for us. So they send us bikes all the time, like the Soloist back here, and we get to ride them. We're lucky to do that, and we can say personally that their bikes are incredible to ride.
That means the best way to know how a bike rides is to ride the bike.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool seeing everything, how it all comes together. What was the highlight for you?
Ooh, the highlight for me was to walk into, I forgot what they called it, but they had like a really cool kitchen. Well, first of all, I'll say that the culture at the brand was incredible. Mm-hmm. The headquarters is cyclist first and foremost. Like,
and great location for
great
cyclists.
location for riding.
Yeah.
And then just everything is set up for cyclists. Like their lunchroom was set up for it. Just, I don't know, like you walk into the main area, I think they call it like the living room or something, and it's just set up there with all these historical bikes. And then Jonas Vingegaard's yellow jersey that was signed was just awesome. What was your favorite part?
Oof, for me, it was, I want to say the culture too. We got there and we saw people rolling into work on their bicycles. And then we later learned they have an awesome locker room for them to have all their gear there to like transition into work day. And then after work, or even during work, lunch rides are a thing there, which is super cool. It's not just Yeti who does that.
But they actually went on a lunch ride. Like, I don't know how many job applications. We do lunch rides. And it's like, you don't really do lunch.
Yeah,
they actually did lunch rides.
They do lunch rides there. We can't confirm that.
Yeah.
And also after work rides. So I got to join for one of those, and it was just super fun. So if you like this video, we have a lot more videos on road bikes right now. Our road bike guide just came out, so you can find that in the description below.
Yeah, there's an S5 in that particular series of videos.
And there's also a soloist.
That's right, we had 2 Cervelos in there. So if you have questions about Cervelos, please reach out to our Gearheads. They make great bikes, and we'd love to get you on one. If you'd like to see us go visit more bike companies,
yeah.
make sure you like this video. And if you have questions or anything else, comment down below, and make sure you subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you out on the roads.
See ya.